G'day everybody, welcome back to another Affinity photo tutorial. This week I thought I would do one of the micro worlds, but we're going to start completely from scratch just with a pixel layer and build it up from there, and we're going to make our own template as well. So the first thing we're going to do is make a new template, and I've just went and did File, New, and I picked the 16 by 9, which I have on screen here. And I'm just going to come down here and go New Pixel Layer. So we've got a pixel layer all set up. Next thing I'm going to do is come over here to the Rectangle tool, and we're going to draw a rectangle. I'm going to make the color, doesn't really matter what color, we'll make it sort of a light blue. Just to start off with. I'm going to draw a rectangle from 300 here on the ruler, from 300, and I'm just going to start here and draw a rectangle all the way to 1300, about there, so 1300 here, and I'm going to take it down to, let's take it down to like 650, about there, so that looks pretty good, and we'll just make sure it's in the middle. We can always move this a little bit later. So that's our first little shape here. I'm going to change the color again to sort of a greeny color. And like, you can do any color that you want. But this time we're going to get our ellipse tool here. I'm going to start right on the edge here. Make sure you've got snapping turned on here. I'm going to start right on the edge and just draw an ellipse all the way out. Make it a bit bigger. And then I'm just going to drag it down into place. So let's just click off that. So you can now see that we've got our ellipse here and our rectangle. So on the ellipse, I'm going to copy it, Command J. And I'm going to bring one down to the bottom here. So let's just put that top. And we'll put this one bottom. So basically we've got our template in place here, and the picture that I'm going to do is called the island. So we're going to start off with this picture here of this rough sea. What I'm going to do is just grab my rectangular marquee tool here and just take a selection of the sea here. Doesn't matter if you get a bit of sky as well. And we're going to copy this over with the Command C over to our picture, and then right on top here we're going to go Command V. Let's come over here to our Move tool, double click on the thumbnail here and make it a little bit smaller. Command 0 to get back to normal size. What we're going to do is going to call this Ocean, make it a bit smaller again, because just want it covering that top part. What we're going to do is just drop the opacity so we can see through, so we can see this green here. And we're going to move this up just so we can see some of the choppy ocean here and maybe some of this choppy on the sides here. So that looks pretty good. So what we're going to do is take the opacity back up to 100, and then we're going to come down here to this top ellipse here, and we're going to come up here to Select, Selection from Layer. Back on our ocean, and then down here to Mask. So let's have a look at that. Let's get rid of the marching ants, Command D, and that looks pretty good. So I'm happy with that. The next thing that we're going to bring over is the picture of our island. To save a little bit of time, you can see I've already cut the island out, and I just use my selection brush tool. It's a fairly quick cut out, so that's okay. Let's just copy that over, Command C, back over to our picture. Right on top, Command V. We're on our Move tool, so we can double click again and resize the island. Command 0. Let's call this island while we're here. And let's drop it into the ocean here. And I want the island to pretty much cover the whole surface. So I'm going to drag mine all the way out to the sides and drop it about there. A little bit more on this side maybe. That looks pretty good. And a bit more on that side. So the island's in place. So what we're going to do with the island is add a mask. Let's get our colors back to default, hitting D on our keyboard. Over here to our brush. First of all, we're going to start off with a nice soft brush and we're going to be painting in black. Let's zoom in with our Command plus or Control plus if you're on Windows. About 25% is good. Opacity is 100 and we just make our brush a little bit bigger and we're just going to start blending that in. So we can just get rid of that line and get some of those waves back up onto our island here. So it's blending our island in into those little crevices. Hit our space bar to move along a little bit and just continue along until we've got that nicely blended in. And that's not looking too bad. Let's just go over it sort of in a bit of a swirly motion. Some of those waves back in there. Okay, Command 0, that's not looking too bad. What I'm going to do now is right on top of this one, I'm going to add a new pixel layer. And I've still got my brush and I'm going to change my brushes to the texture brushes. Down here, textures, and I'm going to pick the very top one, this one here. Make sure the color is white. Make my brush really small. And you see the shape here? I'm going to turn it. I'm just using my arrow key to turn that round a little bit. About there. Let's zoom in again. I think the flow may be about 35. Let's check out that. Hardness, I just want 0. We don't want any hardness. Make that brush a lot smaller. Right along the edge of the island here. I'm going to change the flow back down to, I think, 20. That was a bit too much. And make my brush even smaller. Very small brush. I'm just going to go along the edge here and just try to simulate some of these white caps up onto the island here. Especially in these little dark areas here. Where the waves would be crashing against the island. Okay, and then right along the edge here as well, I'm going to add some there. So just make my brush a tiny little bit bigger. And I'm going to go all the way along this edge. Okay, once you're happy, I'm going to drop that opacity down to about 42%, I think. No, a bit more up. We'll play with that as we go. Let's make it 75%. Just for now, and we'll play with that a little bit later. Let's name that white caps and hit enter. Okay, back to our normal size. And we're going to bring our next picture over now, which is going to be the ocean floor. Again, I'm going to use my rectangular marquee tool. And I'm just going to cut out the ocean floor here. Command C. Back over to our picture. So we want this where the bottom is. So we're going to come up here to where it says bottom. Command V. Again, back to our move tool and double click. And we'll resize that. All the way here, Command 0 to get back to a normal size. And again, we want to stretch that all the way out. Again, what we're going to do with this background, so let's call this ocean floor, let's change the opacity. So we can again see our little green bottom here. And then we're just going to position this where we think it will be good. And what we're trying to do is make sure we've got some of these rocks all the way over covering this green. So I'm just going to bring that down a little bit to about there. Clicking on the bottom, select selection from layer. Going to do something a little bit different. We're going to come up here to our selection brush, make it small, zoom in again with a Command plus so we can see what we're doing here. We're going to add to our selection with our brush here. So smaller brush again. We're just going to add to our selection with these rocks here. You can see what I'm doing here. I'm just selecting all these rocks. Spacebar to move along. Again, I'm doing this fairly quickly. You'd take a lot more time than I'm doing here. Don't forget you can use your option key to deselect if you want to get rid of some of that selection. Just going to go all the way along here, grabbing these rocks till we get to the edge here. Just like that. Double check. Could be a little bit better, but let's go Command 0 and back up to our picture here. Let's bring up the opacity, and then on our ocean floor picture, let's add a mask. There we go. So let's get rid of that mask with our Command or Control D, and we've got our ocean floor in place. So at the moment, these top and bottom ellipses, we can actually turn those off or delete them. I'll just turn them off for now. We don't need them. So we're going to go back to our picture of our ocean here. And we're going to reselect just the top bit without the floor. So just this top bit here, Command C. Back to our picture. Now this time we want it above our rectangle. So let's go Command V. Again, on our Move tool, double click the thumbnail, and we can make it smaller. Command 0 to come back to normal size, make it smaller again. And what we're going to do is call this just the ocean. Again, we want to make it big and get it in place. Right up to about there. Now this one's going to be a little bit different. We're going to take this picture of the ocean and we're going to clip it to the rectangle. So we're just going to drag it and then move it over to the right and just clip it to the shape. So we've got that clipped. Okay, looking pretty good. Next thing I'm going to do is add another pixel layer right on the bottom, and I'm going to change the background color to sort of a darky, sort of purpley blue with my fill tool here. Just make that about that color. We can change that later as well. I'm going to move my island down a little bit. So I'm going to click on the top thumbnail here, hold Shift and all the way down the bottom, not including the background pixel layer. Onto my Move tool, and I'm just going to move that down a little bit, still keeping it in the center. About there, looks pretty good. Next thing I'm going to do is bring over this picture of this sailboat, and then once again you can see that I've already cut the sailboat out using my selection brush tool and then just refining it to get rid of all of the bits that we don't want. It's not perfect, but it's going to be fairly small, so it doesn't matter. So let's Command C, and then that's going to go right on top, Command V. Again, on our Move tool, double click and make that a lot smaller. Bring it into place, and let's just call that Ship. Hit Enter. Command 0 to get back to our normal size. I'm just going to move that, place it about here, and I'm going to tip it a little bit on the ocean. And about there, looks pretty good. I'm going to add a mask. Back on my brush, make sure I'm back on my basic brushes with a soft brush. Colors, I want black, so let's get them back to default. D on the keyboard. Let's zoom in. Small brush. Flow's still 25%, so that's good. And let's get some of that blended in there. And let's get some of that white up the top. Looks like that boat is in the sea there. So that's okay. Might just make him a little bit taller. Pretty good. Command 0. So the next one, I'm going to bring over the picture of my moon here. Make sure we're clicked on the background. I'm going to use my flood fill selection tool. Tolerance is 20%. I'm just going to click in the black. And then come up here to invert selection. So I've just got the selection of the moon. Clicking on refine, I am going to feather it about 6 here and hit apply. And then I'm simply going to copy that, Command C, back over to my picture, and I want it behind the island and behind the ocean. So I'm going to click here on this pixel layer and Command V, placing my moon behind everything. A little bit smaller, and I might rotate it. And I'm going to change the blend mode to screen. I'm going to come down here, name that moon. Okay, with my moon here, still got my moon selected. I'm just going to add a Gaussian blur. Clicking on the Gaussian blur here, I'm just going to blur that moon a tiny little bit. About there, looks pretty good, 2 pixels. Drop the opacity to 75%. And that looks pretty good. Okay, so we've got our moon in place. I might just move it over into the middle a bit. Maybe a bit up as well. Okay, so the next picture I'm going to bring over is the picture of these stars. So Command C. Back over to my picture, and again, I want these stars behind the moon. So Command V. Double click on our move tool, and we can resize. Command 0. Again, these are going to be on screen. It's smaller. Might make the whole picture a little bit smaller with my Command minus. And I'm going to turn that about there. Looks pretty good. You can see that we've got these lines here, so I want to get rid of those. I'm just going to grab my erase brush tool. Make sure we're clicked on the background. Just drop that flow a little bit down to about 10, I think, and let's get rid of those lines. Let's get them off the moon. Okay, I'm going to copy that, Command J. Come up to my move tool. I want to move this one across and rotate it. Maybe about there. Again, onto my erase tool. And I'm going to erase those lines. And again, erase that off the moon. Okay, pretty happy with that. Might just drop that to about 5 pixels. 4 or 5 pixels. Make that a bit bigger. And just sweep across that one and sweep across that one. Okay. So happy with my stars. Okay, next picture is the picture of our birds here. What would a microworld be without birds? So Command C. Again, right on top, Command V. Make sure we're on our move tool. Double click the thumbnail. Let's call that birds while we're here. And then we can resize them. Nice and small. We'll make a few copies of these birds. Going to change the blend mode to darken. Nice and small. We'll put some around our boat here. Command J. Might just flip those over. Some around our boat. Command J again. Some in the moon there as well. Maybe they can be a bit smaller. Maybe one more. And maybe one more here as well, just around our moon. Okay, not looking too bad. Let's just group all those birds together. Command G, make a group. Let's call that birds. Okay, now we can start adding all of our little colors and exposures in. So we'll start off with the island. Yeah, and I'm going to add 2 exposures. Exposure number 1, clip it to the island and make that really light. And invert, Command I. We'll call that light. Add another exposure. Make that one really dark. And invert. Let's call that dark. Okay, let's start off with the dark one. Grab our brush, back to our nice soft brush. Let's get our colors okay, we want to go to white, so X to make white. And the flow is 25%, and let's just darken the edge of our island here, all up here as well. Now let's come to our light exposure. I'm going to drop that down to about 10 for this one. And add some of that light back in there. Just on the edges. Okay. Let's do the same for our boat as well, or ship. Grab that exposure, clip it to our ship. This one I'm just going to do really light. Invert it with the Command I. Again, take my brush, bring that up to about 20 and add some light onto the outer sails there. Looks pretty good. Let's do the same for our ocean here. So let's come to our ocean, grab an exposure, clip it, and this one we can just darken up. And that's where our white caps now, we can bring that opacity down a little bit more. About there. Let's add now an exposure to our rectangle here. Exposure, clip it, and we're going to make that one a lot darker. For our ocean floor, we're going to add another exposure, lots of exposures, clip it, make it really dark. And then what I'm going to do with this one is just on my brush, painting in black, I'm just going to paint some of that light back in like it's glowing on the floor there. Okay, so not looking too bad. What we're going to do now is on our island, we're going to copy the island, Command J, and we're going to go to Arrange and Flip Horizontal and Arrange, Flip Vertical. On our Move tool, I'm going to move it down here. While we're at this point, I'm going to grab my freehand tool, and just where the grass is on this bottom one, I'm just going to cut that out and hit delete. Command D to get rid of those marching ants. So we want this island now, this bottom island, all the way underneath the bottom eclipse here. So let's drag that down all the way under. So our island is all the way under. We've already got an exposure, so let's click on the dark, darken that up. Going to grab our move tool and we're going to move this down till it's just touching bottom of our ocean here. Going to change the blend mode all the way down to about 15%, so it looks like that's in the distance. Again, the white caps I think need to come down a little bit. Not looking too bad. So one more thing to do, I'm going to come back to my ellipse tool, change the fill to black. Right on top again, I'm going to draw another ellipse underneath. Drag that down a little bit. On that, we're going to add a Gaussian blur. And blur that for our shadow about there. Looks pretty good. So there we go, everybody. That's creating the island using our own template, just using our shapes and some different pictures. What we can do is come up and do the usual layer and merge visible. Now at this point you can come over here to your develop persona or your tone mapping. Let's try the develop persona today. Going to turn the clarity all the way up. Going to bring the exposure down a little bit. Saturation down a little bit and vibrance up. Maybe that exposure's just a tad too much. And down here to our details. And I'll take these both up into the 50s. And there we go. That's what it looks like with the develop persona. Or we'll cancel that and we can come over here to our tone mapping. Come to the detailed. Bring it down to 10, I think, on this one. 10. Little bit of exposure. Saturation down a little bit. Vibrance up. And just that detail up a little bit. That doesn't look too bad. Let's hit apply on that. Let's do one more little thing just because we can. Let's come down to our adjustments and add. Let's add a gradient map today. Let's get rid of the green point here by clicking delete. On this where it's red, let's pick more of a orange color. So let's come into the oranges. Orange and blue. That looks pretty good. Let's change the blend mode to soft light and then bring the opacity all the way down to 25%. Let's have a look. There we go, just a little bit of extra color in there. And just before we go, I think we need one more thing. Let's come up here to the pixel layers. Let's grab a cloud brush that we've got here and let's pick a little bit of sort of wispy cloud. Make sure our colors are on white. Brush. Let's add a little bit of wispy cloud into our picture. Again, we're going to have to grab that erase brush and make it about 10 or 12%. Smaller brush. And we're just going to have to get rid of those lines. So there you go, everybody. That is my tutorial for this week, creating that little micro world using the shapes in Affinity Photo. I hope you have enjoyed the tutorial. If you have, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you know when I upload my next video. If you would like to support my channel, you can head over to the Buy Me a Coffee site. That will be linked below. But until next time, I'm going to say to you, stay well, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.